Courier, and I did reach out from the records that we have that I know of and can see there hasn't been a general obligation bond in the history of collaborative Rhinebeck. There were, when the districts were separate, there were some bonds issued back in the 60s, I think in the Rhinebeck district, but unsure as if they're general obligation bonds. But as a current setup, there has not been a general obligation bond asked of, I don't think asked of the population.
60 years since we bonded for facilities.
Correct. Okay, I want to get into the district goals and talk about why the max of 405. So, and Donovan mentioned this in his opening. We are proposing around, right, it said 26 something, we'll call it a $27 million project, right? So 26.3, that's our proposal. You've seen it, you have it in your hands, we've laid it out in front of you. We want to accomplish this with that combination of property tax bonds, GO bonds, and SAVE bonds, right? And again, I mentioned our goal is to keep our tax rate as low as we can while still providing the funds that we need to create a learning environment for our kids, a positive learning environment for our kids. So our goal, if this project moves forward, right, I think it all hinges on a large vote in the SAVE bond, is to bond about 20 million, so receive a bond for about $20 million of the general obligation bond, right? So when we go out to sell bonds, it would be our goal to sell around $20 million of the general obligation bonds, okay? What that means, right, in this example, if that's what it is, in this goal, that would be about a $3.50 tax rate increase to the property tax owner. So $3.50 tax rate levy per thousand increase gives us about $20 million of bonding capacity. Okay, $20 million of cash to utilize the project. So if we just did that, that means for 20 years, because it's a 20-year bond, right, we would be collecting a $3.50 roughly tax increase. Now, I want everybody to understand that number can shift based on our assessed and taxable valuation. So if our assessed value goes up, that bond, that tax levy rate actually goes down. Okay, because you're increasing your value, you're decreasing your rate. If the assessed value decreases across the district, we don't, like that increases the levy rate, and we don't have a lot we can do besides adjust other tax levies, okay? So, and again, that's what we want to try to do, but understand there are things that are sometimes out of a school district's control that we just have to try to figure out how to live with. And that is, if that thing, if taxable value, assessed value decreases, right, that affects the property tax rate that you guys see from year to year, okay? So we're sitting here and, yeah, we're making some assumptions. 20 years is a long time. You can't plan out over 20 years. And so we're looking at short term, right, and hoping that we can keep that tax rate as low as we possibly can as we move forward. But understand, right, if you give us the flexibility to go to 405, right, it doesn't have a lot of impact there.
Erik,
So,
something to clarify is if they vote no to the first one and yes to the second one. I don't think you used that.
well, because the question was if they vote no to the first and vote yes to the second.
That's just dangerous for that to happen.
Well, I have asked that question. I don't know if I don't want to even try to guess on an answer to that question. I asked Matt Gillespie on an answer. Do you know the answer to that question?
Well, I think you said no to the project or you didn't answer the question for the project. What I'm trying to point out is doing the second one and forgetting to do or saying no to the first one gets you nowhere.
Yeah, I think all it would do is it would, you would approve us being able to go up to $4.05, but we wouldn't have the ability, and you're not approving the ability to go out and grab in that first question of $23.6 million. So you would give us the ability to go to 405, but really not give us the ability to do anything because we can't bond it. And that's me anticipating the answer, guys. So again, please don't put that in stone, because I am waiting on the answer on that, because that one has puzzled me. But my guess, because that first question is the question that sets how much money we can get. say no to that, basically you're saying no to us receiving money at all. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So again, we talked about $20 million at $3.50 rate. That would be our goal, right? To sell $20 million in bonds. Utilize the SAVE funding, right, to reach the goal through that way and keep that property tax rate as low as we can for the patrons, okay? So then you're going to ask, maybe you're thinking it, why did we put up to $4.05 on the ballot? When we could have very easily said, let's just cap it at $3.50 and leave it at that, okay? So this is where you ask questions, you raise your hand if you have a question right away, and yell at me if I don't see you. But this is where it can get a little complicated, and yet I think hopefully you guys can understand. And hopefully I express it, you can understand. So if our goal is 20 million, right, and you approve this bond level, the second question, we can bond up to $4.05. But we're only going to grab 20 million or $3.50 of a levy rate. But if you guys approve up to $4.05, what that means for us is we can actually pay that bond off sooner, saving us interest on the bond. Pay the principal down on a yearly basis, above and beyond the regular principal interest payment, right? So same thing that works in your mortgage, right? You guys pay on a monthly basis. If you have a mortgage, you're paying principal, you're paying interest, you're paying insurance, all those things, right? You're paying principal and interest, and that's getting taken out on a monthly basis. If you pay an extra payment per month, that payment gets applied to your principal. In the end, right, it reduces your overall interest cost on your mortgage. Obviously, this works the same way. It's set up for a 20-year bond, right? You can simply pay that bond out for 20 years and do what we need to do and collect just the right amount of property tax on a yearly basis to pay that bond off over the course of 20 years. Or the board on a yearly time frame, when we set the budget in April, by April 15th on a yearly basis, can talk about a debt surplus levy. What that means is, and I'll take the example of 20 million at $3.50 levy. If you approve $4.05, we can levy the additional 55 cents, right? Receive that as a debt surplus levy payment and apply that payment towards the principal of the bond. Okay? This could actually get us down to paying this off if we did it in the max capacity, to paying in the property tax rates, assessed values increase 1% on a yearly basis. We can have this loan paid off in as little as 14 years. Okay? The impact of that is we're saving $1 million or more in interest costs. And I actually have numbers here. Obviously, they're going to be off because I can't foresee what the property tax value is going to do over the next 20 years. But just taking a $100,000 house, if we just pay $3.50 on a yearly basis for 20 years, and you're of a $100,000 house, versus paying a 405 for 14 years, you would actually, over the course of those 14 years, save about $700 over the course of the 14 years. If you're a farmer and you've got land, it's a much bigger chunk of money that you're going to save in interest costs over the course of that time frame. So shorter time frame, a higher rate, but overall, you would pay less on the grand scheme of things to get that and pay less in interest.
You said you go to 405, then you would borrow money and use that to pay off the...
So we wouldn't borrow, no, we wouldn't have the debt. We would simply be utilizing property tax to pay, correct?
Okay.
So it's not us, we're not going out and selling more bonds. We're just simply, we're collecting property taxes at 55 cents per thousand that goes in and pays down the principal.
That we won't borrow.
Correct.
It allows to collect more than the 375.
Yep, correct. But again, and the main goal would be to pay down that principal and get that interest off the books as fast as we possibly can. So, okay. So, in the end, if we were to do that, right, we want to, like I said, it could be as fast as 14 years, saving over $1 million in interest as we progress of the life of the loan, 20 years. In the end, it is still our goal, our board's goal, to keep that tax rate, overall total tax rate of our district, which is now 1007, no higher than 1375 per thousand. Okay? So that is an increase of $3.68 per year per thousand. Okay? And if we do it, it would be for 14, 15 years, whatever that ends up being as you play that out, versus the life of the 20. Okay? We are able to shift management accounts. Management funds one of those, and we can drop that management fund and utilize that to help save, right? And we could even go on a yearly basis, depending on what we do from our expenses out of some of those accounts, we can drop it lower and continue to do what we can to alleviate that burden on the property tax payers. But we set our tax rate on a yearly basis, much like the city does, much like every other public entity, in a public meeting, in a public forum, and we will share those numbers as best as we can for you guys. But we would do that and try to do the best as we can on a yearly basis to keep that property tax as low as we possibly can, while still maintaining the financial viability of the district and the general fund that we have. So, questions about that? Yes.
You're going to borrow $8 million on the save.
Yes.
How are you going to borrow and pay the interest on that?
So that's all included. So we receive monthly payments for the save already. So that's already paid to us monthly. And so we would just take that money we get on a monthly basis and apply it towards the bond.
So you said you wanted that $8 million right away next year. Somewhere you're going to have to borrow, I don't know, $7.5 million.
No, we get the cash. We get the cash for that bond right away. And so we get the money in advance, and then we make that monthly payment using the proceeds from the bond, the save bond that we already
So
get.
you're going to bond for the $8 million and then pay it back with the proceeds from
That we get, yeah, yep. So it's literally like it's money coming to us monthly. We're just asking for a lump sum up front, and then we pay it back.
Where on this question are you asking us to approve you to bond that interest?
We are not.
When you get it in 2019.
So there was
It's already been approved.
There was a revenue purpose statement approved in 2019.
Okay.
But, so there isn't a formal voting process for the save bond that you get at the board level, unless there's a petition that is brought forward. And then when that petition is brought forward, then we have to proceed with the voting. So we can't place it on, it was already passed the due date for this current election, so we have to do it at a later time. That make sense?
Yeah, so in 19 we approved
It was called
we
a,
approved the sales tax.
it was called a revenue purpose statement. Which basically you approve the uses of that money for the district. The district can use it
Put over
on.
like an 8-year period.
No, the revenue purpose statement is approved for until, as long as the save bond, the save rule law is in effect, that revenue purpose statement stays in effect. So typically this is bonded at the board level, so.
Yeah, I think we're in a 25-year term on that.
So it sunsets in 2049 or 2050.
We don't pay that back, we would just get it
We
in an
do-
advance on it.
We do, yeah, I mean, it's paid.
Versus getting it annually.
Right. So right now, we get it in monthly payments. So basically, they say, here's your 20 years worth of bond, of revenue. But it's investors giving us the money. And we're telling the investors that we're paying you back with the proceeds of our saved revenue on a monthly basis. So does that make sense?
So is there any interest on that?
There is.
So we're going to pay interest on that $8
Correct.
million over.
So when we say, yeah, that's the other thing about the bond, the geo bond is more like the interest comes out of the bond payment. So it does come out of our actual revenue we can use on the project. So if you say 8 million, you start talking about interest, and the interest rates going up, that actually decreases our usable amount of saved hours that we can utilize in the project. So it's not 8, it won't be 8. And we won't know until we sell the bonds, if it's a 4% interest or a 3% interest, that makes a big difference over the course of that time. So,
But you're getting that sales revenue now, right?
we would get it,
You have been.
so we get it monthly, correct?
So whether you borrow that, so you're spending that money for something.
Correct.
That money, whatever something is, you've been spending.
Yep, technology buses.
Limited, you're gonna have that money available for something.
Correct, and we would utilize our.
I just want to
Yep, we have a 67-cent PEP levy and a 33-cent board PEP levy as well to utilize those funds. Other questions? Okay, lastly, question about, so it's kind of interesting, when would bonds be sold, right? So could we right away go out and sell bonds if it gets approved? Yep. Will we? No. We will wait until the planning, we start getting to our planning purposes and we have a much better plan in place to know how much we actually need. Also, the bonds don't have to all be sold at one time. So let's say we get approved for the, we want to do 20 million. We could go out and sell $10 million of bonds next year and sell another $10 million of bonds the following year. So we're not just sitting there holding that money, and it wouldn't increase your tax rates all in 1 year as well. It would be sort of a stair-step process. We could just grab it all and start collecting interest on the whole 20-some million, whatever we end up doing. But that may not be the most financially feasible plan either. But we would simply work with our team, work with our financial advisors, work with our attorneys on when is the appropriate time. And they might say, hey, interest rates are going to go down. Right? Wait to sell the majority of your bonds until the interest rates drop so you have more usable money. And we could do the GO bond first, and then do the save bond in a year or two, and kind of space those things out so we're not paying all at the same time. All right, that's about all I have. Other questions you might have for me that maybe I didn't address. I know there are other questions out there. I don't know if anybody, I did see a question about what we've currently spent up until this point. And I do have that. So up until this point, total, on facility study, on the Glad brick building demolition costs for the architect, for construction manager costs, for public relations costs, we've spent over the last, and this was since fiscal year 21, $210,707. Okay, so that's a line which also includes PRA, Modus Engineering. We pay one person and he takes care of splitting out the money. That includes Peters Construction, which we do pay separately, and then the Donovan Group is a separate payment. So the aligned portion was the school study that was accomplished, around $28,000. The demolition planning and preparing the bids for demolition, about $25,000. And some deeper planning on HVAC work, which is mostly engineers, but deeper planning on HVAC work, which is about $83,000. And that was in preparation, right, to move forward as quickly as it goes with some HVAC. That planning is there, it's already in place, we won't have to redo it. And then like I said, Peters Construction was $65,000, and down here, it's about $500. Projecting forward, and I think this might answer the question, why don't you do full plans right away? In working with Peters Construction and Align and all of the other engineers and architects within that group, we would be projecting about 10% of our costs of the project will go towards engineering and construction manager costs. So you're looking at $26 million, do the math on that, it's $2.6 million to create a whole set of plans when you're looking at bid specs and all that work. So that is why we don't create full sets of plans and bid specs as we're going through this process, because there's no guarantee we're going to be able to utilize those as we move forward. That's a large investment for us to put forward, and not a wise investment. I think you would all agree. Spending $2.6 million to hopefully get a bond passed, and to hopefully have those, as this sounds like a good use of the fund as we move forward. So, other questions? Yes.
I would like to know, after we do all this infrastructure and all these building improvements, how is that going to affect the quality of education?
So,
And then, in addition to that, we seem to have a great turnover of high school teachers every 2-3 years. No continuity in teaching. Shouldn't we be putting some of our finances into hiring these quality teachers that want to stay here
So the first part of your question is, after we do all the work, how is it going to be better for our kids? Is that a good summation of the question?
Is that going to change our kids' education?
Yeah, so right now, and I know we have a couple videos out there, and we have, I'm blanking on the team. Mr. Bowman, Tom Bowman, thank you, and Tom for that, did a video about the impact that he would see by utilizing this funds to create a 21st century learning environment. So right now, it used to be desks in rows, and everybody, teacher in the front center of the room, was the way to educate students. That is no longer the case. It is allowing students to work in small groups, allowing students to not get all of their content from a teacher that's on the stage in the front of the room, but give them the freedom and the space to do that. And it's more small group areas, it's more about flexibility. And number two, the big part, safety and security. Safety and security, right? You're never going to be able to relate outside of making them feel more safe mentally, right? But safety and security is an upgrade that I think we all agree has to be made. Trying to keep people and restrict the flow of traffic in our buildings. While that may not, I can't sit here and correlate a direct impact, but if a kid knows that all of these doors are locked and they have to go through the office instead of walking in the front door and get into the entire elementary building, right? That does create a sense of safety and security for that particular student or those groups of students. So I think that puts anxiety at ease, it puts their mind at ease as well. And then HVAC, heating, air conditioning, ventilation. So ventilation is important because, right, we've been through COVID, and I'm not going to get into the details of that or whatever, but airborne illnesses are a thing across the board. Fresh air ventilation in our classrooms, which we don't really have, right? Maybe open a window, and if it's hot and there's no wind, it doesn't matter, right? That increases our kids being in school, that reduces illnesses in the area, that circulates that air, makes it fresher for our kids. And number two, both our teachers and our students are more comfortable and more apt to be able to learn at a higher level and teach at a higher level when they're not sweating, when they just stand in a corner of the room. And I think that's a big thing as well. You may sit here and say, it's happened for years, it's not a big deal, but it is. And we do lose educational time because our kids get out early, because that's where we are. And that's what is going on at this point in time. And to make our staff and our students comfortable, I don't see a reason why we shouldn't. We don't have workspaces, workplaces that don't have AC or heating and air right now, appropriate ventilation. We don't have houses, right, that don't have that appropriate ventilation and heating and air conditioning. It's accepted across all forms of life to upgrade heating and air conditioning.
You can't build it that way.
And current code won't let you build without at least the ventilation portion of that, right? So it's there, and so yes, it will make an impact on our students' lives on a daily basis moving forward.
I just want to say too, the building is used, that affects more than just the few days we get early out. We have summer school, we have custodians in there working to clean it up. That building is also used in the summer. So it's not just those, I've heard so many times, 3 early outs is not a big deal. Well, it's a lot more than that. That building is used a longer time than just those few days.
Thank you. Other questions? Yes.
About a year ago, or a year and a half, maybe a couple of years ago, the government put like $1.3 billion or something towards improving the ventilation HVAC system. How much of that did we get, and what was it used for?
So there were multiple uses, right? A portion of that we had to set aside to use for specific purposes related to learning loss recovery, right? So 20% of that had to be used for, so we had to take that pot and put it over here. Outside of that, right, we did utilize some of those funds as we were getting ready to come back after the pandemic for the school year of 2021 to purchase and have the ability to do online learning for kids and make sure that the infrastructure is in place for that. We purchased masks and other safety equipment that we needed out of those funds. So in the end, when we got done with all the 3 rounds, we have a couple $100,000, $300,000, $320,000 so that we can utilize towards this type of work. So that again, I think Andrew said, you know, we talk about the full HVAC project being 9 or 10 million to drop the bucket, but it is a spot that, again, we want to utilize as many funds as possible. To do that.
Does that include the engineering for that?
So,
Can you utilize
yes,
those funds?
we can utilize it for, so what I have to do for that one, that actually is a reimbursable item. We get reimbursed those expenses on a quarterly basis, but I have to submit a plan to the Department of Education, now Department of Education, that basically includes the entire project. I can't just break out a piece of the project. I have to include the entire project. And then we also have to bring in Davis-Bacon wages on that because it's federal money. However, I've come to learn that I think Davis-Bacon is, maybe you guys are more, the increase of Davis-Bacon is almost negligible now because of the increases in the wages you're paying right now. In some fields, not in all.
Yeah, it depends on the trade.
Electricians are higher.
It does increase cost to
Yeah.
the extent that there's a lot more paperwork for every
Correct.
single person involved. But
Other questions?
Well, how are you gonna break out that portion of the project that big weight?
So I can't.
So you're gonna have the whole project, you gotta have big weight?
Yes, once you put any, so that's where you really have to figure out what is the overall cost of adding that federal funded program to you. You know, if it's more than, well, it doesn't make sense.
or do
And
a
you
separate
looked at
project,
just
or do
throwing that
a
300.
separate project, or do a separate project.
I say throw that 320 out of here, wait for it.
Well, yeah, or
Okay.
do a separate project that is for replacing whatever piece of equipment we need.
And I think if we could somehow find a way to separate out our HVAC project and do that at a different time, that makes it a lot smaller. piece of the pie.
We got, obviously, we got things to figure out.
But if we throw it in and I say I'm doing a $26 million project, that's
To do the overall project, Davis Bacon would probably not for the money. So we just have to sit down and figure out how to approach it.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much for coming out. I hope all of you get out and vote next Tuesday. If you have friends, take them with you. I appreciate the questions, great questions tonight. I appreciate the time. If you have other questions or want to talk to me separately, please touch base and I will do that, or you can also email me as well if you have questions. So thank you very much. Have a great day.
I know. I was wondering if you had some. I did. I wasn't even. I'm surprised the microphone was. Put it down.
Why keep me apart, yeah, so it's getting better, but they just don't have
Really? I gotta say, I mean, you get the jig done, and how many welders, they can make quite a
Oh, they don't even use welders.